Get your paychecks up to 2 days faster with Early Pay. True story. Welcome to Huntington.
Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of The Week That Was. This is Saeed Khan, and boy, it's one of our guests have already said it is a beautiful day in Detroit today, getting up into the 80s as it will be this weekend. So enjoy yourself out there as we have now crossed the Rubicon toward all things pumpkin spice lattes, and the such. There's no turning back with the fall beverages until December? I'm sure they'll find a way to extend that too. Well, we have a lot to talk about this week, and we are joined by a fabulous cast. We have political pollster Ed Sarpolus. How you doing, Ed?
I'm doing great. Just remember, it's going to heat up even more. Trump's in town on Wednesday.
Oh, wow.
Ooh, that's right.
Going from the literal to the metaphoric to the literal in one fell swoop. Excellent. We have with us attorney Joel Sklar. How you doing, Joel?
Doing
We
great.
have AM 910 host Adolph Mongo. How you doing, Adolph?
Hey, how you doing?
And we have formerly from Deadline Detroit, we have journalist Nancy Derringer, and we have former editor-in-chief of Deadline Detroit, Allan Lengel.
Hello, hello.
Trump might be coming to Detroit this coming week, but President Biden was already in town for the North American International Auto Show. Riding high, not only in a fancy new Corvette on the preview day, but also in the polls. I think up around 45%, it seems, has really taken a boost up. Also at the auto show, he pledged that there's going to be 500,000 charging stations nationwide, which I guess if my math is right, makes it about 10,000 per state. But I think if you think about population, maybe Wyoming will get 2, and maybe we'll get some of the bonus from that. But it seems as though he is certainly now operating off his front foot going into the midterms. His popularity is rising, whether that is at the expense of the 45th president or some of the other things going on. How do you assess Biden's popularity, and what is it going to mean coming into the midterms? Let's start with you, Ed.
Well, the important thing, the fact that Gretchen Whitmer decided to appear with Joe Biden tells that the numbers are changing. Number 2, she wanted to appear with Biden because support for Joe Biden amongst African Americans has almost doubled since the springtime. We now have 75% support amongst Black population, where he was down almost below 50% back in the spring. So for the Democrats, they need to win statewide. They need large turnout of people of color communities. So actually Biden was actually adding on to that to help with the top of the ticket races. So I think Biden is still not out of the water. High inflation is still there. There's still other issues. But with Tudor Dixon doing so badly, and I just did some other polls with Allan, the fact that Biden made the right decision to come to Michigan.
Very good. Well, Adolph, how are you finding it? I mean, on AM 910 and with the people with whom you speak, how's Biden looking?
I was there at the auto show. I saw the president speak, and you know what? It looked like somebody shot him up with something because he was energized. It was a love fest. But what I didn't like about the whole fiasco is that they whitewashed the city of Detroit. Nobody of color had any. I'm not talking about the UAW president because he represents the unions. I'm talking about the city of Detroit. You had Debbie Dingle, you had Rashida Tlaib, you even had Shree getting announced. It was a love fest with Democrats. Mike Duggan. Where was Mary Sheffield from the city council? You had, Whitmer is going to have some real problems if she don't get a big turnout. She need a big turnout, and they didn't turn it out at this speech. Biden talked. He sounded great. Oh, they're gonna give $100 million to pave over 375. Damn, there's 150,000 people or more was displaced, and the only people that I talked to who calls in and say the only people that's going to make anything out of this is the developers, Dan Gilbert, Gary Turgo, all them. They're going to control whatever boulevard they put down there. What about the people that were displaced? A lot of them are still alive. Their kids are still alive. And, but Duggan, he's good at talking about 500 jobs here, etc., electric cars. We know we can't even get a grocery store in Detroit. What about these charging stations? They're not going to be in the neighborhoods. They're not going to, what, 4 or 5 downtown or over at East English Village? So we got some issues we need to deal with, and the governor need to come, and she need to campaign. Just showing up at Cobo is not going to do it if you're going to get a big turnout.
Right. I think when I remember, I was going to say, I remember in 2016, Hillary Clinton came to Wayne State University, which she didn't need to go there to have a rally. She needed to be, as Adolph, said, she needs to go in the neighborhood. She needs to go to the churches. And now we see Whitmer. Whitmer needs to get on the ball and figure out that Detroit is just there's such a wealth of votes in the city. The issue is, it's not an issue of whether there's Democrats in the city. The issue is whether people are going to feel inspired to go out and vote.
Well, we've got a history here in Detroit of creating a Potemkin village. I remember when Kwame was mayor and we had the Super Bowl, they went ahead and made Woodward look like it was an active, thriving downtown boulevard. I mean, it is now. But back then, it was just a bunch of window fronts that they had going on. And today, word comes out that they're going to be building a new high-rise hotel right next to the Little Caesars Arena. So, I mean, we've got gentrification definitely happening, and certainly a magnet for maybe conventions and other out-of-towners. But what does it mean for regular Detroiters, Joel?
Crime out of control. And you got another kid shot. You had the president here. This is the time where the mayor need to say, you know what, we need more police. We need more money to deal with the gun situation. They're not talking about it. Duggan don't talk about it. He put James White out front every week. He looked like he about to implode. Because, again, another kid playing with guns, should have been in school. They in the basement playing with a gun, dead. Nobody's addressing it, not even the city council, not the state reps, not the county commissioners. Nobody wants to talk about it.
Now, Nancy, they're talking about Biden's pledge to have more cops out there, but doesn't that then sort of play into some fears that people have regarding race-related tensions with the police and with law enforcement?
Well, yeah, I think it does. And I noticed that the one thing that Tudor Dixon has talked about that isn't abortion lately has been this plan that she has to spend, hundreds of millions of dollars getting more police to deal with the crime situation. Duggan has talked about crime, Adolph, but it's all about tricks like ShotSpotter and, the real-time crime center and all this stuff. And I, honestly, I don't know what it would take to do anything about the homicide rate or the kids playing with guns tragedy rate in this city. I don't know that more cops are the answer. I think,
Community. Listen, there was a rash of schoolgirl rapes, gang violence in the early 80s. Coleman Young called block clubs, corporations, etc. together for a 2-day citywide summit, and they had a game plan. This guy don't call anything. Well, he don't talk to people.
Well, it's like I said, it's all about ShotSpotter and tricks that you can
technology.
Yeah.
Well, we all know they make mistakes when they identifying black folks. They'll pick me up saying that I've been a stick-up artist. Oh, we made a mistake. Listen, till they get the technology right, they need to have boots on the ground. They need to do something.
Going back to Adolph, under Dave Bing, there was a study done by the FBI said that Detroit needs to double its police force, but no one's going to talk about that because nobody wants to pay for it. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean just general police, but police in general. Secondly, the governor has no people from the black community that are telling her what's actually going on in Detroit. Every time I look to these mayors and her black representatives from the cities, like They're not saying anything. And thirdly, Gretchen is still asking people in the Black community if she needs help to get into the Black community. I'm still freaking out after 4 years. What is her Black team in Lansing that she's hired can't get her in the Black community? It's really strange.
Because she talking to the wrong Black people.
That's right. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah.
Joel, where do you see this issue?
Well, I mean, I think it's one about systemic racism in police. The police forces throughout the nation is known. I think that the problems are deeper than just police. I know that putting more police on the street makes us feel safer, but there are systemic issues, education issues, community issues that need to be addressed. Crime is a manifestation of rot below, and not rot in the sense of we failed. And I think if we can put more money in, I'd rather see social services, education. I'd rather see a foundational money put in as opposed to simply putting more cops on the street who may or may not be effective. I just think it's a systemic issue, and crime is a manifestation of our failures. And I think we have to address those core issues to have any hope of change. We can put Band-Aids on things, we can stop things, but this should be long term. And I think we have to address the systemic issues of education and community first.
Yeah.
Allan.
I was going to say, I totally agree with Joel. I think we put way too much of the emphasis on the police department to solve all our crime issues, and it's so much deeper than that, as Joel just mentioned. And we're not going to see immediate impact by when we start doing more education, more social work, more after school program, stuff like that. It's going to take a while before it puts a dent, but we have to start. And
right.
Nobody has the patience. They want immediate. And so it's like more cops, more arrests. I mean, in the 80s, we had Governor Blanchard, who started building this massive prison building project, and more prisons came out, and they filled them up with people, drug-related things. The crime didn't change at all. It's always the most simplistic thing, and we can't look at it. I mean, crime is so complicated, and we can't look at it simplistically like that.
One more thing related to that, Adolph, one more thing related to that, because we don't have any more representation in Detroit going to Lansing because of the cutback in representation. The only thing you're going to get money for out of Lansing is for police. So everything you're talking about, the social cases, the Republicans controlling the legislature ain't going to give in money along that line at all. No. The only thing they're going to give money for, our problem, in fact, we can talk about all the social programs, but where are you going to get the money? Because the state ain't going to give it to you, and the feds are only going to give it to you. So where do you get it?
Well, and you know what, Allan? If the police showed up when you call, if you live in Huntington Woods, you live in Pleasant Ridge, you live in Troy, and somebody break into your house or break into your car, the police is there. But when you're in Detroit and you have a heart attack and you call 911, if you live in an area and the police are not available, EMS won't show up. If they do their job, if they showed up when you called them, that's all people are looking for. We're not looking for the police to solve all the issues, but damn, they can show up when something happened. You call the police. They come the next day. Listen, it's chaos in our communities, and we got nobody to speak for those folks that feel trapped in their house at night or during the day.
Guy Gore, back in I'm trying to remember what year it was. It was 2015, maybe. Did a story about. I did a long column about all these people who had their car stolen one night over in Corktown. All these suburban folks who would come down to all these fancy restaurants, and their cars were missing. And when I wrote about it, people were like, "Oh, grow up already! This is the city. This is the way it is." And Guy Gordon came out. He was at WDIB at the time, and he asked me to come out there, and he interviewed me. And he said, "Allan, are we having suburban expectations?" And I go, "Guy," I said, "What is that such a high expectation to come out of the restaurant and your car's still there? Do we say, oh, I got robbed, but I didn't get shot?" I said, Detroiters have to have suburban expectations. And I wrote a column about that. They have to have higher expectations and demands to have a life so they don't have to move to the suburbs.
Right.
Well, that's a problem that happens in the suburbs too, Alan. I mean, you walk out into the parking lot and your car's missing, and then you realize your driver is somewhere else. So, I mean, there's always problems going around. Well, somebody else who was at the North American International Auto Show with President Biden was, in fact, our Department of Transportation Secretary, Pete Buttigieg, who has recently, along with his husband and his son and daughter, moved to the state of Michigan. Well, this did not go unnoticed by the Michigan GOP co-chair, Meshawn Maddock, who tweeted out saying, "We're so blessed. This weak little girl," referring to Buttigieg, not his daughter, moved to Michigan. Looks like he's bringing all his California dreaming here with him. The problem is that Pete Buttigieg, before being Secretary of Transportation and before being a presidential candidate, was the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, which the last time I checked, not only is not in California, it's not even close to any coast, and maybe Lake Michigan. It seems as though she hasn't disavowed the tweet at all. In fact, I'm sure that she's probably raising money with the GOP for it. And Buttigieg had a fairly dignified response by saying, she wants to talk about little girls. Chaston and I, his husband, are raising a little girl and a little boy, and we are raising them to have better values. The rest is politics. Is this just the way it is now? Similar to how Guy Gordon simply said to Allan, this is just the way it is when it comes to crime. Is the GOP simply just representing this kind of toxicity?
They're the party of hate. They're the party of anger. They're the party of rage.
I was just going to say, I read a newsletter this morning where a guy said essentially their entire platform is, we are assholes,
right.
And we're proud of it. And,
right.
and, we will name call, we will hit below the belt. We'll
be assholes.
It's like, we're happy to be proud assholes. And
that's Nancy, can you sing that to the tune of "We Are Marshall"?
Well, one thing I want to share with you on the fact is because of the work that I do in politics, all the Republican vendors that typically work going back to the Milliken years have decided to end all their contracts with many of the Republican candidates of today. There are still Republicans that are very good in the state, but their voices are not being heard because Ron Weiser hired the Trumpite to be the spokesperson for the party. That's all you're going to hear. But I've been consultant, and where are the vendors for it? And all the Republican vendors saying the fact we're not working with Republican candidates because we can't fund any non-Trump candidates.
But in fairness, Ed, I mean, let's face it. I mean, the Democrats helped to drive Pete Meyer out of office, so it seems as though there's a general enablement.
I think that's. Wait a minute. You just said the Democrats helped drive him out of office.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I
think that whole ad campaign has been a little oversold. I mean,
matter of fact, they hardly spent any money in that race in that.
Yeah, I was just going to say there were some ads.
But the money was nominal, not enough to have impact.
Yeah, I mean, the idea is
a token thing. I looked at the ad buy. There was the bottom line. Meyer was, because of Trump showed that up to say. It wasn't the money; it was the fact that Meyer didn't have the railroad for all to compete.
Yeah, and he was, and Meyer is bitter about it, and I totally understand that. But I mean, to act as though this was some kind of, secret weapon that defeated him. I mean, I think that's being a little disingenuous. I mean,
I get it. It's not a laser guided Jewish missile that Marjorie Taylor Greene talks about. Okay, let's go ahead and just make that sure. Allan.
I was going to say, and Ed can comment afterwards, but the Republican Party, the playbook of nastiness has worked under Trump for so long, and now I see it's turning. The tides are turning, and I think this could be, and Ed maybe can weigh in. I think this election could be a TKO for Trump. I think if he loses, if the House and the Senate remain Democratic here in Michigan, I think the Democrats have a really good chance of really dominating. And I think the Republican Party is going to turn their back and realize, okay, the playbook of nastiness and lying, that Trump has pushed is not working. And the bottom line for them is they just want to win. They don't care how they win.
Well, I would agree with you there. The difficulty is going to be is the fact that the Democrats are going to have to take back both the House and Senate at the national level. Okay. because without even if we hold on to the Senate, you have so many seats in Congress. That's where the voices are going to be. In the 50-50 Senate, the Republicans are going to remain silent, so that's not going to help out. The other problem we have is that if the Democrats don't take control back of the Congress, then the point being is the only hope you've got is DeSantis to see if he can make hay out of Trump. Last night, Trump said the fact even as if he's indicted, he's still going to run. So the question is we have to take back the Senate significantly, and we got to control the House to have any impact in that arena.
Yeah,
yeah, we got to get people that we can't depend on. Joe mentioned and that woman from Arizona. We gotta have a little cushion.
That's right. I agree with you. That's why it has to be more than just 1 or 2 seats. It's got to be more significantly because you got to offset those 2 votes. If you offset the votes, then we can pass things. But if it's just control the Senate, it's not going to really mean much. But the bottom line is, until Trump goes down officially, you're not going to see a change because they're fearful of him. As long as he's not in jail, he's out of business.
True.
And we have a couple ads. I don't know. We can play 1 or 2. John James, to just give you a flavor of what the campaigning is about. Here's the one. John James versus Carl Marlinga out in Macomb.
But true. Carl Marlinga served as character witness for a man accused and convicted of rape, calling him one of the most trustworthy public officials he knows. Marlinga even defended a man convicted of child pornography, including a sex act with a 3-year-old. Carl Marlinga made his living representing sexual predators. Now, he wants to represent you. Congressional Leadership Fund is responsible for the content of this advertising.
First of all, Carl Marlinga was a judge in Macomb Circuit for 9 years. He was a prosecutor for quite a long time there. And to say that maybe in private practice for a stretch, I mean, to pull out a client or 2 and characterize them that way, I think is just really...
Well, defense attorneys, I mean, too bad we don't have Fishman with us today because, defense attorneys defend people that are accused of crimes and often they're guilty. And, this is just, I mean, we used to believe that these people deserved the best defense they could have. And now it's like, oh, I only take innocent clients. What is this, the Soviet Union? Jesus.
I know that. The only thing for your background, the only reason Carl Marlinga will lose is the fact that the DCCC is not funding Carl Marlinga's campaign. Right now, the Democrats have not invested money in the campaign. If they don't invest money, Carl Marlinga will lose.
Why? Why are they not? Why are they ignoring it?
Because they were convinced by Andy Levin that the seat could not be won. That's why he switched seats to run in. So he tainted the water before he got out. He switched seats because he convinced him so badly that seat can't be won. That's why he was switching.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Well, Joel, being an attorney, I mean, you certainly have your experience with clientele. And ones that perhaps might be questionable enough in case you ran for office. How do you see then the landscape with those kinds of attack ads?
You're muted.
I think you're on mute.
Oop, I think they're unfair. Thank you so much. I think they're unfair. I think they're distorted. Attorneys represent, everybody's entitled to a lawyer. You don't have to take the case if you don't want to, but Marlinga was a criminal defense lawyer. He took on a client and he advocated for the client. He did what the Constitution wants him to do. There's a 6th Amendment right to representation. Marlinga fulfilled that purpose for his client, whatever his client may have done. There's nothing wrong with doing that. That's an obligation that he took on that he should be taking on. So, it's like, you give some bad music and a heavy voice, anything could look awful. He had a Whopper for lunch. Anything could sound terrible. And that's what we're doing. It's an unfair, obviously, ad, and it's meant to be unfair. It's not meant to be anything other than that. It's inflammatory.
That's kind of a stop the presses conclusion. It's unfair. Wow, the ads are unfair. So it's just
right.
Lucky for Carl, the fact they never mentioned John James' name, and the fact that so that's to the benefit, because without mentioning who the solution is, it still may not impact Carl Marlinga. The only point we could vote is the younger voters in Macomb County, because the older voters know Carl. It's going to be the younger voters that will be impacted by that ad.
Now here's another
Allan,
John
I think
James.
you got an ad.
And this ad creeps me out.
From the time I coached him in high school, I knew John James had something special. But it wasn't football. John's a leader who never quits. He proved it as a soldier and a businessman.
Too many people in Washington are quitters. We need new blood who won't quit until we lower prices and bring back manufacturing.
Good job. Now let's wrap this up.
I'm John James. I approve this message.
Still coachable.
So what are the odds that? What's the odds that that old guy actually threw him the ball?
There was something about the way they held hands that I felt like he was going to help him out of the golf cart because the guy.
I know.
he
Just
probably
some
needs help out of the
information
golf
for you.
cart.
I know Mr. Falcasa because I used to compete, and he was at Brother Rice for a number of years. Okay. And the important point being, Mr. Fracassa right now just has some dementia and stuff like that. So
Right.
So the bottom line, he does not know who he was saying, why he was saying, and what it was all about.
Let's wrap this up and move on.
Wait a minute. You mean that wasn't Gail Sayers?
Can
No.
I just say once again, John James, the last time he ran, I said this and I'm saying it again. With that guy, it's a noun, a verb, and a helicopter. And it's just that helicopter is in every, and now I notice they've animated it so it the rotor spins a little bit. And
Well, he's for Beanie and Cecil. He still's got the Cecil things living around his head.
and also some absolutely dazzling teeth whitening going on.
But you laughing at him. He might be your congressperson.
Oh, I know.
Well, I agree with that, but that's because the Democratic Congressional Committee is not spending any money in Michigan on that race.
Yeah.
Because they listened to idiot Andy Levin,
That's
who should have moved. He should have looked at his father. His father represented the west side of Detroit. They redistricted him out. He followed his voters. Went to Southfield. He followed his voters.
Yep.
Andy, listen, just like the coach at Michigan said, he found himself on third base and he thought he hit a triple. That's all that was. Now he found out that he couldn't win on his own. He didn't have the Levin name wasn't strong enough to win.
Yeah.
Well, look,
there are.
Sander Levin was popular in Macomb County. I think because Andy Levin thought he was too progressive for the county.
Right. Well, Sandy Levin was a liberal. He represented Detroiters, people in Southfield and Macomb County.
Right.
He got elected, reelected.
Yeah, but Andy Levin did not work when he was in office. He didn't work the district to the community. He was sort of invisible, and unless you do that, you don't understand because he didn't realize how large the black population is now in southern Macomb County.
Yeah.
If he had worked in that district, he would have been okay.
Right.
Well, he had everything handed to him. He thought this was going to be handed to him, and now the Democrats probably lose a seat that they should have won.
Yeah, true.
Well, Adolph, you mentioned earlier about the Senate and a lot of the races going on there. Well, we have a particular Republican senator from South Carolina who has, shock of shocks, reversed his position on something he had said previously. Senator Lindsey Graham is now proposing an abortion ban after 15 weeks of pregnancy, despite the fact that at one point he says, well, Dobbs has now pushed this to the people and to the states, but calling for now a national ban on abortion. First of all, is there any chance that it will pass the Senate, let alone get signed into law and survive an override? And the other question I have is, why?
Yeah.
Well, no.
This
has
been
been easy answers to unnecessarily complicated questions. The first answer is no. It has no chance. The why, I'll let one of you other guys talk about the why.
I think the why is, he's trying to sort of moderate the Republican approach to abortion right now. Instead of the no exceptions, they're trying to say, hey, we're more reasonable after 15 months. And they say that,
15 weeks.
15 weeks. I'm sorry.
Be an elephant, but
they're not elephants. Well, yeah.
But the other thing that he fails to mention the fact, if you have existing laws that are worse than this, you can keep them.
Yeah.
So that 15 weeks only applies to states who have not passed any legislation themselves. And his bill says, if you go back and make something more restrictive than what I'm proposing, you still can do it worse than what I'm proposing.
Yeah. Right.
It's very.
But I imagine that there are some vulnerable Republican candidates out there, either seeking re-election or who thought that maybe they would be able to pick off an easy seat. who have got to be worried about this, because it seems as though it's an issue that they certainly didn't want to inherit.
Well, you can go to all their websites and see who scrubbed abortion on their website. You can tell who believes that they're in trouble.
The analysis that I heard on a different podcast earlier this week is that he thought he was hitting a sweet spot, because he knows that not a vast majority, but about 2/3 of the country wants to see abortion remain legal in certain cases. However, there is also this wide middle of people who would like to see at least some restrictions. These are the people who honestly believe that a woman walks into a clinic and she's 8 3/4 months pregnant and says, "I've changed my mind, I'm having an abortion." You know, the dumb Charlie LaDuff hypothetical. That simply does not happen. Women who have later term abortions are generally speaking facing like the worst medical news of their life. And it's a life and health of the mother or the fetus situation here. But anyway, they want some kind of restrictions. They like the idea of parental notification for minors. They like the idea of having some sort of cutout. Basically, they like what we had before when Roe v. Wade was still standing. Which was nothing.
Well, all the Republicans have to do is look at the canary in the mine. That's Kansas.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
What the women in Kansas said.
Bill out there too, with the Republican senators out there trying to put together a compromise, if they could get it through. So there is already Republican Democrats working together to come back something more acceptable to both sides. Obviously, they can't have it all one-sided,
right?
But there is some conversation if we can find get up to 60 votes.
But Lindsey Graham thought that he was threading the needle on this.
Right, he's trying to moderate.
I mean, this is just not the time.
His judgment is impeccable.
Hey, Ed Sarpolus, maybe you can talk a little bit about this latest poll here in Michigan that you took with Alyssa Slotkin and
Tom Barrett.
And Tom Barrett, and how
he's the white John James. He also has his pilot helicopter that he uses, and he drives around. What's very important in that race, I thought that the district leans Republican, that this race would be a lot tighter than it was. The poll that I just completed yesterday, as a matter of fact, Alyssa Slotkin is up by 18 points over Tom Barrett. It's 56 to like 38. And what's important there in that poll is the fact is that 30% of Republicans, solid Republicans, are supporting the woman's right to choose. 60% of the voters in that district believe the woman's right to choose. So what his problem is, the fact is that this issue is cutting against him, because right now 20% of the 20% of Republican votes voting for Gretchen because of that issue. Mm-hmm. Secondly, what's amazing, the fact that by going crazy right now, Tudor Dixon is actually hurting Tom Barrett in that district. Okay, she is suppressing the vote. Only 28% of the voters like her.
Oh wow!
Only 32% like him. But so this whole issue is impacting him down the road. But on the same token, Gretchen is having some problems in this district. Her numbers. Actually, right now, Alyssa Slotkin is doing better than Gretchen in that district, and Gretchen could end up with a very close race in that district because of other issues, because people don't necessarily like Gretchen because of some of the things that she does. But Alyssa Slotkin, here's the person. Alyssa Slotkin won't tell you if she's right to life or pro-choice. Okay, she will not, because that district does lean very conservative. There is a lot of pro-choice. She had a lot of problem in the district, but she's, as Allan and I talked last night, she's very smart. The Democratic Party is taking the lead on this issue. But I just want to point out, wherever your issue is, the fact that, Tom Barrett is so afraid of this issue that he scrubbed his website.
Right.
And how effective do you think her ads are, where Alyssa presents herself as bipartisan, working in both Republican and in Democratic administrations? It seems as though she really hits home with that in a lot of her ad buy.
So you can tell it's hurting because the Republicans are trying to challenge it by saying she's voted 100% for Biden. You got to remember, the bulk of this district, at least the Oakland County is very smart, but the point being, she has a history of saying these same words for the last 2 years, okay? So the bottom line is she can point to that. You got to remember, she's not a model. She's an attractive candidate, but she's not a model. She looks like a hard worker. She looks like she's a real strong person. Yeah. So she's very effective with saying those ads because she's got things that she can talk about. And the other advantage, the fact is that even though Tom Barrett this is a Republican district, he comes from Eaton County. That's like only 20% of the whole district. So Slotkin knows what will help her win over the last couple campaigns because of making these statements of being bipartisan. Okay, so but no, her ads are okay. Because I live in Eaton County, I see all her ads and I see his ads. They don't have an issue to hang on her right now because what she's saying is they can't fight back because Tudor Dixon realized the fact that she's screwed because now she wanted to get people to talk about economy and jobs. Because right now the rights issue is impacting that district. And what Slotkin is doing, she's going under. She's talking about everything else but economy and jobs and what she's doing in the district. She's letting the party do both the abortion rights issue and Gretchen. So that's why that's working.
Interesting.
Those abortion ads are super impactful. I think the ads that I see about Tudor Dixon, those are remarkably. I mean, I think they're wow.
Well, the reason why they work because they don't say that you have to be pro anti-abortion to support this measure. Okay, because what's very important, for example, 40% of right to life voters in 1992 voted for Bill Clinton. Why? If you go back to his acceptance speech, his opening speech in New York City, he said, "I am pro-choice. I'm not pro-abortion. I want to reduce the need for women to have to make the decision." And you and I want to work. We have a common ground, and I want to increase adoptions. Remember that?
Yeah, and they came up with that was where we got the phrase safe, legal, and rare.
That's correct.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, when he came into the auditorium, his pollster, Stan Grieber, was standing and prepping him what to say when he walked on the stage. Never say you are pro-abortion. You're pro-choice because it's up to women to choose, but you're not necessarily you're there. That's why he was so effective in 1992.
Sure.
Oh, thank you. Well, you're a font of information. That is great.
I've been doing this for 50 years.
I'm a font of disinformation. You're a font of
and you have Allan wedged right in between.
Right.
Somewhere in between, a little disinformation, a little information.
Well, so that makes you a little bit country and a little bit rock and roll out.
Don't ever say that again. Oh, that memory. Marie. Okay.
Speaking of the 90s and Bill Clinton, we have the passing of somebody who, let's say, probably got under Bill's skin during the 1990s. And that, of course, is Ken Starr, who left the mortal coil at the age of 74. Known, of course, most perhaps prominently on his tombstone as being the special prosecutor, a nemesis of Bill Clinton with the Monica Lewinsky case. He then went on to become the president of Baylor, and I believe also Pepperdine University as well. So what is the legacy of Ken Starr, and can we trace what happened in the 90s all the way to here? Nancy?
If I were etching his tombstone, it would say, "Here lies Ken Starr, panty sniffer." So that's, he's the guy who insisted that, the Starr report be full of, prurient details about exactly what Monica and Bill did together in the Oval Office. And he was gross.
We remember the only reason we have a Monica Lewinsky "I Got Milk" ad is because of Ken Starr.
Right. That's true. Exactly.
Because when you were in DC, they've got "I Got Milk" with Monica Lewinsky on the front with the white on her lips because she drank a lot of milk.
Wow.
Allan.
I think I was in DC at the time and working at the Post, and we did a lot of stories on that. I thought Ken Starr was a piece of shit.
Yeah.
Really. I thought he was one, and subsequently he writes that he regretted going down that path with Monica Lewinsky. At the same time, then he's in the impeachment helping defend Trump. I think he was fired from Pepperdine or something for not doing enough about sexual assault.
I thought that was at
Baylor.
That was Baylor.
Yeah.
The irony of it,
And so I just thought the guy was just so amoral, and he pretended.
He thought so highly of himself.
He was a douchebag.
He pretended to be such a high ground there, but I thought he was just a piece of shit. I thought I was there during the whole unfolding of that whole thing, and it was just disgraceful what his role in that whole thing. And Brett Kavanaugh,
his little quisling toady Brett Kavanaugh too. We can't forget his role in that. Yeah. And that's, I have to say, those Ryan Murphy miniseries, I think that I dislike about 80% of them But the one that he did about the impeachment of Clinton with Beanie Feldstein as Monica Lewinsky, I thought was really good. And it got into that. It was like, we have to ask her about this. We have to ask her what she did with the cigar, blah, blah, blah. So.
And it's interesting during the Trump impeachments, he was like, "Oh, this is the wrong way to go, impeachments." And yet,
you know what I say to that guy?
Yes. So no great loss to this earth.
No.
You didn't go to the services, Allan?
Where's the Shiva?
Only if they have Shiva coffee cake do I show up.
I'll bring the bun cake.
And now, let's hope the Grim Reaper comes next for Clarence Thomas. But
so what are the odds that they would actually have the Kaddish at either Baylor or Pepperdine there, Allan?
Pretty slim.
Yeah. Let's play some bets on that. Well, interestingly enough, it seems that Ken Starr was not the only person who had issues being at the helm of higher education when it came to sexual abuse and sexual harassment. Here, more locally, we have Michigan State University President Samuel Stanley having to then deal with some of the allegations regarding his handling of Title IX with not the same as Dr. On CNN, but Sanjay Gupta, the dean of the Eli Broad School of Business at Michigan State. As of right now, it seems as though Stanley still has his job, although at the same time, it appears as though there was some nudging by members of the Board of Trustees at Michigan State that he should resign lest he be fired. First of all, what is the status on President Stanley? The latest in a bunch of Michigan State presidents who have had to deal with controversy. And then what does it really say about our higher education institutions? We had a similar issue, it seems, at the University of Michigan with Dr. Schlissel as well.
And don't forget Wayne State. They didn't renew his contract. He didn't retire. Right. They wasn't going to renew his contract. Right. So we got the big three.
Very true, Adolph. But that was not for sexual impropriety. That was just because they didn't think he did a good job. But I take your point well. By the way, disclaimer, I do teach at Wayne State University, and so the views that I have or Adolph has or anybody else has are not meant to besmirch the university, the institution, or anything in Metro Detroit. Okay.
Well, I'd say, to me, it's just amazing, how many presidents here in Michigan have been pushed out of their universities. And really, the common theme is that they're so protective of the image. They're so worried about the donors that they don't give a shit about the students in the end. The students come like third or fourth on the list.
Well, I think the other aspect is you find out, no matter how elevated somebody is, they're still apt to be completely decrepit human beings, and you see that everywhere. I mean, I do a lot of sexual harassment cases and, there's predators every place. And you just find out that people are not what they appear to be. And I think that's true with, with presidents of colleges and universities. They say all the right things. They got a remarkably beautiful resume. They're credentialed up the ass, as it were.
Make a lot of money.
But they make a lot, but they're very, they're faulty. They're foiled. They have problems.
Well, I found that everywhere. I've worked for universities as consultants in Michigan. I worked at the legislature. I worked with other businesses. This problem exists everywhere.
Correct. It seems to be the human nature of it. It's unbelievable. And what's strange for me is some of the, even police officers, knowing that they're being filmed, still act. They know they're being filmed. They know they have body cam. They're still committing abuse and excess. Where is this coming from? And it's just another form. I think when you see
the higher you get up into the atmosphere, the bigger this problem is.
Right.
Because I remember I remember in the early '80s when Xerox was hiring prostitutes as part of their sales force.
Really? As part of the sales force, or
yes.
it's a service
reproduction?
No, sales force.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. Okay.
You never get laid off.
Yeah. But you do get laid. You know what I have to say, and this is a very tangential point here, but I am, I thought I'm gobsmacked by how much money a major university president makes these days. And these contract buyouts are astonishing. I mean, today I read that they offered to let him, they were going to pay him the rest of his contract, and he could then, which was $900,000 a year, and then he could, take a demotion to simply being a faculty member and make $400,000 a year. It's like I can't even conceive of the zeros on that paycheck. But
I once saw a graphic, Nancy, that had a map of the United States, and it said who's the highest paid
I've seen that many times.
Public official in the states, and it is either the president or chancellor of a public university or the athletic coach.
I was just going to say it's usually almost always the coach.
Right. Who gets paid more than Saban at Alabama? Nobody.
Yeah, exactly. But
you see those commercials about Southern New Hampshire University?
Yeah.
That guy makes $1 million a year. The president.
New Hampshire
University?
Yep.
He make $1 million a year.
Wow.
Wow.
See, the problem at university level, you're looking for status. I have the most expensive guy. I got the most credentials, the most experience.
Right.
It's more that way. It's the same. It's basically they're afraid. It's all about image.
Yeah.
It's a whole image thing. It's like you got to have the most expensive football coach because of its image.
Yeah, and I do realize that it's a unique position. It's like running a major corporation, but having like a bazillion bosses beneath you. You talk about $1 million, Adolph. I think Gordon G at Ohio State broke that barrier, some time ago. But Gordon G has to deal with the people who want, it's an enormous university, Ohio State. And you have not only all the academic stuff, but then you have the sports crap layered on top of that, which is at least as heavy as the pressure. Actually, it's probably much greater than the pressure to produce graduates. You have to produce Heisman trophies and, Big Ten championships and Rose Bowl visits too. So it's, I don't envy them. So maybe they earn all that money, but
Nancy, I think you need to do a little bit of investigative journalism on exactly how much Ohio State spent in order for them to then have the moniker the Ohio State University.
Yeah,
I can't imagine that was cheap.
I'm sure it wasn't cheap either, but it's funny because I graduated from Ohio University. And my diploma says the Ohio University. It was the first university in the Northwest Territories. And I think they're allowed to use that but Ohio State used to be just a cow college. I mean, my Ohio State came into my consciousness as a Columbus native during Vietnam. And, when everybody was going to college because you got a student deferment and, at one time it had an enrollment of like 80,000. It was, on the Columbus campus. It was just ridiculous. And, it was the place that people in my high school went when they couldn't get in anywhere else. But,
unless you were Jack Nicklaus and you went there to play golf.
Well, you can play a lot of sports at Ohio State. I chose Ohio University for two reasons. It was not in Columbus where I grew up. I wanted to leave town, and it had a great reputation as a Class A party school, and I can say on that front, it did not disappoint.
In fact, it was like underrated.
Yeah,
right. A plus party school.
Yeah, exactly. And then when I finally decided I wanted to major in journalism, it had an outstanding journalism school. So there you go.
I think they should have called it an Ohio University.
An Ohio.
Yeah, that would have had a lot more punch. And by the way, Ed, the whole thing about Xerox and the processes, I bet you no one ran out of toner.
No.
Okay. Just checking on that. So, higher education is where people go supposedly to become more educated, or in Nancy's case, achieving a balanced, well-rounded life when it comes to the social and the scholarly. But things happen earlier on, it seems, and in K-12, this is the new battleground. In the city of Dearborn, we find that in the public school system, libraries are now having to pull books at the behest of parents because they take objection to certain titles like the book Flamer by Mike Corrado, Push by Sapphire, All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson, And They Lived by Stephen Salvatore, The Lovely Bones by Alice Sebold, Eleanor and Park by Rainbow Rowell, Red, White, and Royal Blue by Casey McQuiston.
We don't
and
have
this
to go down
book
the whole
is
list,
gay.
Saeed.
There are only 7 by
Can
Juno
I ask
Dawson.
you this though? Can I ask you this because I'm not up on this one. Did this push come from...
I didn't memorize, though, in case that was a question you had.
Okay, no. Did this push come from the Moms for Liberty conservatives, or did it come out of the Muslim community?
That I really don't know. And I have a feeling that there's not a whole lot of overlap between those
No,
two
I really don't think
demographics.
so either. That's why I asked. But it's interesting. I mean, we're dealing with the Moms for Liberty and Grosse Pointe and also some kind of like homegrown bespoke Moms for Liberty type groups here. And I've seen their list. There's a group called FEC United, and they have a list. And it's everything by Toni Morrison's on there. It's like Toni Morrison has a Nobel Prize, but you can't read her book that contains like a 1-page description of child sexual abuse. But I mean, these people are not playing with the full deck, and they're not dealing in good faith. And I am not surprised. This is just
So the coverage of the story doesn't seem to indicate who might be behind the objections. Having said that, though, and in my own anecdotal unscientific work on it, I have found that in the Arab and the Muslim communities, there really is an awful lot of commonality that they have with these more mobilized groups. They do find a bit of cross-pollination when it comes to social media. They pick up a tweet or something and then simply replicate it and say that if this is in fact what's happening in the school district, we must take action. Certainly when it comes to Muslim and Arab social media, the topic of gay books is thriving. And so I wouldn't necessarily put this on external or outside public interest groups. This could simply be homegrown to Dearborn, but yeah, stay tuned. It is literally as close. Which, of course, I love the irony of the fact that for all of those conservatives who were decrying the fact that Dearborn was a no-go zone, I suppose they'll go ahead and blame this on Sharia law as well.
Yeah, probably.
So that remains to be seen. Allan, I do believe we are at that time of the show.
All right.
Right, and because I'm dealing with schmucks all my life, I know who a schmuck is, and I know the difference between a real schmuck, a plain schmuck, and just a plain regular schmuck.
And there we go. We are on Schmuck of the Week, so I am going to throw it to you, Adolph. Who is your Schmuck of the Week?
The city of Detroit. We have the auto show. Now I see cops all over the place. They patrolling Michigan Avenue, etc. Now when our visitors leave, Michigan Avenue turned into Indianapolis 500 again. So yeah, city of Detroit.
Okay.
All right.
Now, Grand Prix, not Indianapolis 500. We actually do have that one.
IndyCar.
All right, Nancy.
I am going to go with Meshawn Maddock, the co-chair of the Michigan Republican Party, for the reasons that we discussed earlier, the homophobic tweeting about Pete Buttigieg. But I also want to pile on with the fact that she is simply doing a terrible job. I don't think, I've been saying on this show, never say never. Anything can happen. Elections are, not done deals. But all indications are that we are heading for a massive blowout in what's supposed to be a red wave year of all three executive positions: Tudor Dixon for governor, Matt DePerno for attorney general, and Christina Caramo for secretary of state. I think all three of them are on track to lose. These were candidates who were not only promoted by Meshawn Maddock, but endorsed by her ahead of the primary, ahead of the state convention, which is generally supposed to be a no-no because the head or the people who run the party are not supposed to take sides until the voters have taken sides. They're supposed to uplift the entire party. But finally, bottom line, I'll get to this quickly, is one of the sayings in politics is it's a science of addition, of bringing more people onto your side, bringing more voters into your side. And I simply cannot believe that we are so retrograde in the state of Michigan that all the Republican parents who have gay children, who have, Republican voters with gay friends, with gay colleagues that they respect and like, are okay with this. I mean, this is like racial dog whistling at some level. And it's despicable. And it's driving voters away. And she's just lousy at her job. If that's what she thinks it takes to win, then they need a new chairman because they're going to do a lot of losing. So that's fine.
All right. Ed, who's your Schmuck of the week?
Schmuck of the week. Actually, I have to go to Lindsey Graham.
Ooh, good one.
I just think if I look at somebody as captured like everybody, everywhere I read, talk, it's Lindsey. That's Senator Graham.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Succinct. Joel.
Brett Favre. For his scandal, for making a lot of money for Mississippi, directing money for public services, I thought, and court to a volleyball court, and which I think was cost millions. A beautiful court.
$5 million.
$1.2 million.
Very
Is that what it was? Okay.
But it's Brett Favre, and so just.
You forgot to mention it. His daughter played volleyball at that school. Yeah,
right. I think it was Troy University. Was it?
No.
What school was it?
It was. I think it was something called the University of Southern.
Oh, you're right. USM, Southern Mississippi. That's
yeah.
Brett,
University of Southern Mississippi. And as soon as I heard the name of that, I thought, wow. It's like could have sent his daughter anywhere, and he sent her to the University of Southern.
And also worth adding that Jackson, Mississippi, still doesn't have potable water.
Yeah.
Exactly. Also, a small detail to talk about the use of funding.
Great quarterback, little wild, great QB, but an awful human being from what I can see.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'll give him his skills, but there's something about Green Bay Packer quarterbacks that they're just odious individuals. I mean, Favre and Aaron Rodgers. I mean, Bart Starr, I can't say anything bad about him. I mean, he was all right, but I don't know if any of you remember way back in the day when I think it was a Thanksgiving Day when William Gay for the Detroit Lions just flattened the Green Bay Packers quarterback, and they had to
last name.
It was.
I was at that game. It was a late hit. It was. I think it was blindside.
Yeah, and they taped him. They had to tape his head down to the stretcher and carry him off the field.
Yeah, it was classic William Gay hit, which was typically late. And he just. I remember that I was at the Silverdome. I remember that game. It was. But Dickey was the QB, and he just blindsided and drove him into the turf.
Wow.
Yeah, they threw Gay out of the game, and I mean he was actually sitting there on the sidelines crying. I mean, so I mean He is a human being and he does have feelings. So, but then apparently such violence no longer occurs on the field when the Lions are playing. It happens with their fans outside the stadium. For those of you who are noticing that. So for all of you who ever heard growing up, take it outside. The Lions fans abided by it. So
it's better than the Pistons where they did it in the stadium.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
The malice in the palace.
Malice in the palace. That was a good one.
Great.
Mine is Ron DeSantis, who flew some Venezuelans up to Martha's Vineyard. Is just a sort of a point, and it pisses me off that he's taking these immigrants and using them as a joke to kind of poke people in the eye. And the immigrants were they were told, hey, we were told we were going to get jobs and they were going to give us assistance, and we get up to Martha Vineyards and we're like, what the hell are we doing up here? And the other person who's doing that is one of the other people is Governor Greg Abbott out of Texas. He sent recently 2 busloads of immigrants to outside of Kamala Harris's home in DC, and it's like they're just they're punking people, using these people as a joke. These people are lost, and it's just disgraceful. I mean, there should be something criminal. Yeah, they're scared. I
think it's important to let you know one reason why they're doing that, because right now that is being discussed not in the way that they're doing it at the White House. But Biden and his staff is trying to move people into these other cities on a record orchestrated plan. And so basically, Biden sort of sums them up for this, because the fact is that there's been a White House now for the last 6 months to do something similar that these governors doing, but with a structured plan.
Too bad we don't have Richard Whitmark pushing Greg Abbott down the stairs in the wheelchair.
Yeah.
They're not sending it. The plan isn't to send him to Martha's Vineyard.
No.
Yeah.
But what it reflects to me is that you're treating immigrants as subhuman. You relegate.
It's human trafficking.
It is.
Kidnapping. It might be kidnapping or whatever. Yes.
And I'm sure Adolph is up on the history of the civil rights movement. This is an echo of the reverse freedom riders, which is something that Southern governors did during the civil rights movement in the mid '60s.
Well, you know what? They just taken a page out of all George Wallace, Ross Barnett playbook.
Yeah. I know.
Well, the other thing that's lost on all of these people, whether it's on the Biden administration or on Governor Abbott or on Governor DeSantis, is that the Immigration and Nationality Act makes it a criminal violation to move undocumented individuals from one state to another. So they are all guilty of their own laws. So there you go. Well, now that you have taken away all of my schmucks, I'm going to have to come up with a new. Actually, I had Brett Favre, I had Governor DeSantis. My schmuck of the week then is the new head of CNN, Chris Licht, Licht, for messing up what seemed to be a pretty good formula that was working with CNN by moving anchors out. I think Don Lemon has now been moved from 9 o'clock prime time to the morning show, which, and then also getting rid of other individuals too, like John Harwood, all under the auspices and under the pretense of bringing balance to CNN, which Licht feels is probably lurching too far to the left. It clearly is not an MSNBC. And it doesn't seem as though Licht has the stomach to make it the next Fox News either. So the fact that he is dangling CNN into an area that is unfamiliar to its viewers and really straying away from what had been its core area of expertise, ethos, and focus, Chris Licht, you're my schmuck of the week.
I'll just add to that. And when James Fallows took over U.S. News and World Report, my father read that probably for 35 years. He tried to turn it into a Time magazine and doing essays and stuff like that. He lost the core audience. My father changed to Time magazine. My father, loved U.S. News and World Report. He ruined that magazine, and we've seen it with others as well. So we've seen it with Newsweek. Same thing happened. They ruined Newsweek, and so.
I think that's what happened when Hefner added articles. Guccione really kind of capitalized on that with Penthouse. Similar analogy, I think you're going there with Allan.
Right.
What do I know?
Yeah.
I just read him. I just read him for the ads.
Hefner had a different spread to look at in the magazine.
There you go. And on that note. Ed Sarpolus, Joel Sklar, Adolph Mongo, Nancy Derringer, thank you so much for being on. And as always, Allan with the last word.
Drive home safely.
Thank you so much.
Have a great weekend. Have a great week, everybody.
Everybody do well. It's been a joy.